Valentine's night. I am bid forth to supper, but wherefore should I go? I am not bid for love, they flatter me, but yet I'll go in hate, to feed upon the prodigal Christian. I am right loath to go. There is some ill a-brewing toward my rest, for I did dream of moneybags tonight. The Merchant of Venice, Act 2, Scene 5. On the night of February 7th, all of D Company's personnel assets got together in the Kiwanis Club hut, with the exception of Jerry Lungard and Christina Ekstrom, both of whom Hatfield had decided to keep completely in the background and as compartmentalized as possible. In addition to the original Trouble Trio, there were 3 new volunteers in the beach shack. Tony Campisi was a short and stocky man in his mid-30s, a truck driver for one of the few local logging firms still in operation. Lee Washburn, Charlie's younger brother, was there. A slimmer and grimmer version of his brother, like Zack, Lee had been forced into day labor for the temp agencies, doing whatever kind of work he could get for a horrifyingly inadequate weekly minimum wage check. Jesse Cat Eyes Lockhart was there as well, a man now in his late 20s, his auburn hair long and unkempt, lean and keen, a slightly wild look on his stubbled face and his bloodshot eyes, but sober and eager. I haven't touched a drop since you talked to me, Zack, he'd promised Hatfield, and Hatfield believed him. This should probably be the most of us who ever assemble at one time in any one place, said Zack. The thing is, you all need to be in on this. Cat, you stick by the window and listen in, and keep a keen eye peeled for any movement outside or any sign of an approaching vehicle. You strapped? Lockhart pulled a stainless steel Magnum out from under his jacket. Okay, let's get down to cases. They all sat down at the table except for Lockhart. This time it was Ekstrom who passed around the by now obligatory cups of instant coffee. Donner had been right, the men were starting to live on the stuff. This is going to be a doozy of an opening number for D Company, and we've got 1 week to work out all the details, Hatfield told them all in a cheerful voice. We're going to try for 2 major takedowns within 24 hours, the second one flowing from the first. This means we've got to plan and carry out the Goldman hit in such a way as to leave us windows of opportunity for the FBI attack. I've thought about this, and I think the best place to hit the Phoebes would be at the same place we do Jake and Irene. I am basing this on the assumption that the FBI, when they do show up to investigate this nasty, horrible hate crime, will be constrained to at least put in a token appearance at the actual crime scene and pretend they're Sherlock Holmes looking for clues in dogs that didn't bark in the night. I think it's best to hit them there instead of trying to do anything at the Coast Guard station, if they showed there, or around the courthouse, or the sheriff's office downtown, just yet. Astoria is a 19th century town, laid out for horses and wagons and not automobiles. The streets are narrow and congested. Making a getaway out of that confined area would be a bit on the risky side, especially in the daylight. Plus, I think attacking in or near an actual enemy building or installation is a bit beyond us as of yet. I want to do the Goldmans up close and personal, with handguns, so that the FBI and the cops don't get an inkling that we have somebody of volunteer Lockhart's skill and stature on our side. We'll introduce him to the boy on bigger targets than a couple of Jews. That's why I don't want you in on this first job, Jess. When they get here, I don't want those Phoebes to suspect that a sniper's clocking them, at least no more than they would anyway, as a standard precaution. This means we're going to have to cook the kikes outdoors, in an area with plenty of firing positions around it, which is vulnerable to Cat's ballistic daring-do later on, most likely in the daytime. Our guys have taken a couple of long-distance shots at them in Portland, but if possible, I want the suits to think they're safer out here and let down their guard a little. Why not tag the Goldmans outside their house? Asked Lee Washburn. That's one possibility, yes, said Zack. Although that's a residential neighborhood, so we'd have to lay in wait somewhere. And there's always the chance of nosy neighbors peeping out their windows and seeing something they shouldn't. Plus, we'd have to park the cars somewhere, and there's more chance they'd be noticed and remembered by some little old lady walking her dog or something. I'm basing this on the assumption that a long-time married couple will most likely go out to dinner on Valentine's Day, and so we need to find out where they're going and if possible take them down at the destination. One of those yuppie fern places downtown would present problems of escape. Even at night, these narrow little streets and small blocks and blind intersections around here would be a bitch to do a high-speed chase through, if it came to that. We'll be working downtown eventually, and so we're going to have to figure out some way around that obstacle course, but for the moment we don't have to. It seems our illustrious XO has achieved his first major coup as an intelligence officer. We know where they're going? Asked Campisi excitedly. Rigoletto's Beanery on the 39th Street Pier, reservations for 8 p.m. on February 14th, said Hatfield. You have the floor, Charlie. It's amazing how you can pick up stuff about other people if you'll just sit and listen and pay attention, said Charlie with a grin. Something all of us need to be doing, all the time, put in Hatfield. We lucked out like hell on this, and I didn't have to investigate anything or do anything. Just be in the right place at the right time with my ears open, Charlie told them. For the past couple of months, they've had me down at the Tongue Point Job Corps Depot. Instead of doing what I'm supposed to do for the Forestry Service and being out in the woods helping Mother Nature along, now my purpose in life is trying to teach disadvantaged urban youth the ways of the forest, the ins and outs of the timber industry, basic woodcraft, culling, and how to set a choker, and how not to cut your own leg off with a chainsaw. You can guess what kind of so-called students I've got, including some charming youth offenders and gangbangers from Portland, whom I would suggest as worthwhile targets in themselves if they're still here in a few weeks. I think there are maybe 4 white kids in my group. Then there are about a dozen wetbacks who don't speak English. They snuck into the program courtesy of Bowater and Cascade Paper, who want some free training for their cheap labor supply. Plus, there are a couple of nigger kids from Portland who disappear into the woods and smoke weed most of the time. All at the taxpayer's expense, of course. Sounds like our target list is growing, commented Ekstrom. Oh yeah, agreed Charlie with a vigorous nod. Anyway, the state has also hired at taxpayers' expense some so-called vocational aides, mostly yuppie wannabe mammoths from some community college in Portland. They show up wearing those skirt and jacket dress for success business suits and carrying briefcases that contain nothing but their makeup and their lunch, and they act as so-called communications facilitators, that is Spanish interpreters. I had to learn some Spanish when I was in the U.S. Army after the invasion of Venezuela, but I never speak it with these women or when I'm working with the so-called students, and they either don't know I hablamos español or else they don't care. One of them is a girl named Conchita Ramos, and apparently she knows Kyle Wapner, the owner and manager of Rigoletto's Beanery. I was in there once, said Ekstrom. Took Ava there for dinner, and unfortunately we'd already sat down before I saw the prices on the menu. I had to max out my one remaining visa just for salad and a couple of sandwiches. It's a très chic watering hole for our blue state elite, all right, agreed Hatfield. One of those places where if you have to ask the price of something you can't afford it. Yeah, continued Charlie. Wapner isn't officially on our Jew list, although with that name I'm suspicious, but he's on the liberal scumbag list. He toadies to the Goldmans and their ilk, probably because he makes his living off of them. I'd say he's a future candidate for the hit parade himself as a race mixer, because apparently he likes hot tamales. He threw a pass at Conchita, and apparently he connected. She's been showing off a new wristwatch and some snazzy new threads he's apparently bought her. Plus, there's been a lot of girl giggle in Spanish. Anyway, getting back to the point, the other day I'm sitting in the break room having lunch, and Conchita and some of the other girls are over at another table. To them, I'm just another middle-aged gringo guy with a big belly, and we're invisible now. I doubt they even knew I was there, or it even occurred to them that I might understand what they were saying. I listened, and I got an earful. It seems Wapner doesn't speak Spanish, so he asked Conchita to run down his Valentine's night program with his kitchen and wait staff. The Goldmans were a big part of it. They've got a special private dining room reserved. But get this, they're not going to be eating off the regular menu. Goldman has ordered in a special 10-course glatt kosher dinner for 2 flown in from, get this, some high-toned restaurant in Jerusalem. This special nosh is going to be coming in from Israel by chartered Learjet and helicoptered in from Portland to our little airport, and then rushed to the Beanery by taxi, where Wapner will give it a quick warm in his ovens and microwave, specially rabbinically kosherized for the occasion, and serve it up to the happy Hebes, plus all the trimmings, kosher wine and hors d'oeuvres and whatnot, and the whole dining room covered in sheaves of roses. Total cost for this evening of conspicuous consumption, including a handsome backhander to Wapner himself for using his restaurant while not deigning to eat the same food as the rich. Goyim eat will be over $60,000. Mother of God, gasped Campisi. Hey, you ever been to a rich Jew's bar mitzvah? Said Hatfield sourly. Among the Hofjuden, it's not unknown for them to rent whole stadiums and spend hundreds of thousands on celebrity entertainers, exotic food and drink, and weird shit like having the bar mitzvah boy ride in on a baby elephant. The Jews are the high priests of conspicuous consumption. I've never even seen $60,000 in one place, said Campisi in anger. My family has to make do with meat twice a week, and that's with me and my wife both working. My boys will never enter the door of a college because they're males with white skins, and will never be able to afford to send the girls either. My father died last year because we couldn't raise a few $1,000s to pay medical bills and the bastard clinic cut us off. Said the two of us made too much money for their assisted program. My mother is going to follow him soon because we can't buy her medicine. And if we put her in a state home, some pocky doctor will decide she's lived too long and shoot her up with poison under the Senior Citizens Quality of Life Act. And these Jew swine are spending 60 grand on a single night of lovey-dovey oy vey. They deserve to die for that alone. You want to back that up? Asked Hatfield quietly. We'll need a second shooter. You got one, said Tony. Good, said Hatfield. This new information gives us a perfect layout for both hits. Rigoletto's Beanery is on the old cannery platform out over the river at the end of 39th Street. I paced it out this afternoon, and allowing for the curve of the access pier, I make it almost an even 200 yards from shore, an extra 10 to the river walk. I'll need the second car, that's Lee and Charlie, to wait outside the Goldman's house and let us know when they leave. We've got some special cheapo cell phones for that purpose. After this double feature is concluded, the phones go in the river along with the E-pieces, the handguns we use. We need to make sure every piece of physical evidence vanishes, except for the vehicles, which we don't have enough of yet to Deep Six. Jerry Lundgaard is arranging for the Yukon to be resprayed afterward, legitimate plates put on, etc., said Ekstrom. He'll be using one of his mechanics, a guy named Mackinson, whom Jerry recommends we speak to about joining us. For now, though, Mackinson will do what he's told and won't ask questions. Then we need to stash the Yukon up at that location I mentioned, unless it gets ID'd, in which case we'll have to make it vanish. Charlie, you and Lee will have a used Toyota from Jerry's lot. The plates will be stolen, but you're only going to need it for a few hours in the dark, in a town that is still very lightly policed. We think the risk factor is acceptable. Jerry will ship it out the next day on an exchange with another dealership up in Seattle. These dealers do a lot of trading back and forth to keep their inventory flowing. One guy down here has too many Toyotas and another guy in Seattle or California has too many Nissans, so they level it out. Just try not to bring it back. All shot up. If we do this right, there shouldn't be any shooting except the holes we put in Jake and Irene, said Hatfield. Charlie, once you see the targets leave the house, you call us and give us the signal. Tony and I will then pull the Yukon out onto the platform and into the parking area, get into position, and wait. Do we take them before or after their big imported kosher banquet? Asked Tony. Before, on their way into the restaurant. We don't need to be waiting around for a couple of hours with guns in our pockets. Besides, Hatfield continued in a grim voice, I don't want one single $60,000 kosher morsel flown in all the way from Jerusalem to go down those kike's gullets. I want that vile slap in the face to my people to sit there on the table getting cold and gooey, while the roses fade and the petals fall to the floor. Call it a symbolic act. The Goldman's Day is done as every sense of the term. Lieutenant, you have the soul of a poet, laughed Lee. What if there are people around who might see the whole thing? Then they see the whole thing, said Zack with a shrug. We'll be masked and I will screw out the night bulb on the Yukon's rear plate so it will be hard to read in the dark. It will most likely be raining, anyway, this being February, or at least cloudy and very dark. The one thing I don't like about this is there's only one way on and off that platform, over the pier. I am assuming Goldman will be driving his Lincoln Town car, right? He might take the SUV to a Valentine's dinner, but most likely not for romantic reasons, said Washburn. Okay. When they reach the restaurant, you guys pull over on 39th Street and wait. Cover the exit ramp on the pier on the wild off chance that something goes wrong, and either they make a break for it or else we get into trouble and need help. When Tony and I see Goldman's Jew canoe come across the pier and into the parking lot, we pull out in the Yukon, right up to the edge of the pier so we're ready to roll, said Zack. We leave the engine running. We get out of the vehicle, closing but not slamming the doors, doing nothing to alarm them. We intercept the targets on their way inside when they clear the parked cars so they can't duck down and cover behind anything. We shoot them both, triple tap, first bullet dead center to put them down, and 2 more into the head to complete the execution. We walk at a quick pace, but do not run, back to the Yukon, and we drive at a normal speed off the pier. And then we rendezvous at Shangri-La. Shangri-La was a code name for a vacation rental RV on a scenic bluff overlooking the river in the nearby crossroads village of Napa, which Len had been given the keys to in order to install a new water tank and which keys he had copied. "Sounds simple enough," said Len. "Yeah, but the simplest plan can go haywire because of the smallest misdetail or unexpected occurrence," said Hatfield. "We need to get into the habit of going over these things 24 times, extrapolating anything that might cause a hitch or go wrong." "One question," asked Ekstrom. "Have you thought any more about booby-trapping the Goldman's Lincoln after you send them off to the Great Catskills Resort in the sky? You remember we're supposed to booby-trap everything we can. I can give you a PVC pipe bomb with 6 sticks of dynamite. PVC is light and won't fall off. With a pull-tab detonator and a goop strip you can use to stick it onto the underside on the driver's side. You use a small magnet to stick the other end of the detonator cord onto the door, and when someone opens the door it will pull the lead foil tab from between the battery contacts, and kablooey! "I thought about that, Len, and I think we'll pass on it for this one," said Hatfield. 3 reasons. First off, we don't know for a fact we'll have time to do it. Secondly, if anyone sees us planting the charge, they'll be able to warn people off. No point in making a bomb that doesn't go off so that the Batfake can disarm it, examine it, and analyze it for evidence. Third, most likely the first person that opens the Goldman's car door will be a local cop, maybe someone we know. Remember what the adjutant said about collateral damage? I have to admit, I'm still a bit squeamish about popping the top with a bunch of people milling around, spectators and white police, so forth. God knows this will all get nasty enough soon enough. But make up that banger and keep it handy. We never know when we may need it. Now for hit number 2, the one that will put D Company on the rebellion's map. Those dead FBI agents we promised, Brigade. That's where you come in, Cat. Lot of assumptions there, Zack, said Charlie, shaking his head. I agree, said Hatfield glumly. Trouble is, the ball is in the enemy's court to a large extent on this one. We're assuming that the FBI will send someone down to investigate the wicked, hateful murder of 2 prominent and highly connected Jewish citizens. But we don't know that. The adjutant tells us they're jumpy and paranoid, and they may sense that we're setting bait for them. They may even try to set a trap for us in return. We're assuming that if they do send someone down, that they will at least visit the crime scene to look it over. We don't know for sure that any of this will happen. They may not come. We may have to make do with popping some U.S. Marshals or Homeland Security goons, or even state police detectives if they're all that offers. The FBI may come, but a week from now or more. I want to put together a plan based on the probability that the FBI will send some agents and possibly a forensics team on February 15th. But we may have to wait, and we may have to change the plan half a dozen times or even chance a float, just plain running them down on the street somewhere and blasting them in a drive-by. The main thing is we've got to know when they're in town, who they are, how many, and what they're driving. I'm assuming they'll be checking in with the sheriff first, if only as a courtesy. We're going to need Christina bad, Len. Was she able to get on day shift? There had been a lot of discussion between Zack and Len and Christina herself as to how widespread the knowledge of her new affiliation with the NVA should be within the company. Obviously, the more people who knew her identity, the greater the risk. Zack decided to restrict it to the 6 people in the room at present, because in this first operation it would be impossible to conceal from the members of the team that the fledgling D Company had a contact in the cop shop. And since all of them knew Christina and knew she worked as a dispatcher, trying to hide her identity was pointless. They made an agreement that if any of the 6 were arrested, Christina Ekstrom would drop out of sight immediately and disappear to Portland or Seattle or some other point in the homeland and join an NVA unit there. No problem, said Len. One of the other dispatchers is on maternity leave, and the schedules are all out of whack, so no one noticed. They don't care so long as the board is covered. Is she solid on this, Len? Does she know she's going to be helping kill some people? Asked Zack anxiously. Representatives of the same organization that refused to classify the attack against her as a hate crime, and warned her that if she didn't shut up about it she'd be investigated for racism herself? Replied Len. Yes, she knows, and she's happier than I've seen her since it happened. She'll be there for us, Lieutenant. Whatever she learns, we will know. Let's get back to the part where I get to plug those FBI droids, said Lockhart. I still don't have a proper weapon. I presume I get to choose from Mr. Field's private stock? I like that Russian Dragunov. Sure, if that's what you want, said Ekstrom with a smile. But before you choose, you might want to check out a little present from Commandant Coyle and the boys in Portland. Cat, in exchange for that shitload of weapons we sent the 1st Brigade quartermaster, they gave us something for you. Hatfield went out to his truck and came back carrying a long box with a brown leatherette finish. He put the box on one of the picnic tables and opened it, displaying a red velvet interior containing a number of dark inset contents. Lockhart's eyes lit up in the pure joy of the true gun lover as he lifted a long, elegant rifle with a black walnut stock and butt out of the case. Christ almighty, he exclaimed. An M21. Sniper version of the old M14 semi-auto, with complete cleaning kit and accessories, said Ekstrom proudly. We had a familiarization course on these at sniper school at Fort Benning, and I think I remember most of it, but I never thought I'd get to use one in action, said Lockhart, balancing and presenting the rifle. The older guys in the sniper school swore by them. They were all pretty much out of service by the time I went through. Where the hell did they get this beauty? No idea, and I didn't ask, Ekstrom told him. The commandant just said our brigade's best sharpshooter needed our best weapon. The cleaning kit and sling and other stuff are down in this drawer here at the bottom of the case. Cat was examining the barrel. Oh, this is great. You know, I was hoping to get hold of a weapon, maybe a BMG Barrett or an AR-50, and blow some big holes in some. The Brigade, bad people, but this is even better. This baby's chambered for standard, so the ammunition will be a lot easier to get, and if I can get first dibs on any armor-piercing ammo we pick up, that will somewhat make up for the kinetic striking force of the... Or I can just plain notch my bullets. He picked up the telescopic sight from its cradle. Infrared night sight built in. You know, they trained us for kills up to 800 yards at Benning with the M24, but if I recollect correctly, some of the old guys in Nam claimed they killed at 1,000 yards with this. They were able to provide 6 magazines, and we can load you up with ammo, said Ekstrom. Since it's semi-automatic, you can get off multiple shots more quickly and accurately than you could if you have to use a bolted chamber every round, like the M24. That extra firepower will come in handy when you need to keep multiple enemies' heads down after your first shot. Oh yes, said Lockhart, hefting and leveling the rifle, sighting down the barrel. In a good covered position, with enough ammo, I could hold off an infantry company. They'd have to bring up copters, or artillery. You won't be standing anyone off, Cat, said Hatfield. Shoot and scoot, remember, don't risk yourself. If ever it looks like it might be too dangerous, I want you to fade. Remember General Order Number 8? Well, that's one thing I wanted to talk to you about, sir, said Lockhart. When I was in Iraq, we all had cards or some kind of mark we used to put on or near our kills, signing our work, so the Hajis would know who was on their tail, a psychological warfare thing. I was the Jack of Diamonds. I was wondering if it would be allowable for me to do the same here, when I can do so safely, of course. Maybe leave the card in my firing position for them to find? Wouldn't that be just broadcasting your identity to the enemy? Asked Hatfield. Look, they're not dumb. I've already got a record for horrible evil racism and male chauvinism and God knows what else, reasoned Lockhart. Why the hell do you think nobody will hire me? When bodies start dropping around here, and it becomes clear that they're up against someone who knows what he's doing with a rifle and scope, it's not going to take them too long to figure out I'm involved, and they're going to come looking for me. Why not make some political capital out of my reputation and my Medal of Honor? I'm not a glory hound, Lieutenant, but I think it would be a big boost to our side if they know that we're not all losers and criminals and ignorant inbreds, which is how we're portrayed on the news these days. You realize that will make you one of the most hunted men in the Pacific Northwest? Demanded Hatfield. They've already hunted me out of everything, said Lockhart bitterly. This filthy society has hunted me out of my wife, my children, my future, my dignity, and my hope. Good honest bullets will make a nice change. Then we'll start you off with each one of us buying a bicycle deck and giving you the jack of diamonds. Only let's all make sure we wear gloves when we handle the cards. No sense in deliberately leaving the enemy a fingerprint. Now, once again assuming the Phoebes will show at Rigoletto's, what about firing positions? Cat, you know that big hill overlooking 39th Street, the heavy woods? Yeah, said Lockhart. How far would you make it from more or less the ridgeline of that hill down to the parking lot on the 39th Street Pier Yuppieville? If memory serves, 700, closer to 800 yards, said Lockhart, pursing his lips. That's within the M21's range, sir, but to be honest, I'd like to get a little closer. I'd better admit I'm still a bit out of practice. I think I can do it from the hilltop, but for something of this significance I shouldn't think. I should know I can do it. Second, there would be a pretty sharp downward angle, maybe even as much as 30 degrees depending on what firing position I choose. Third, there's a lot of gusty wind on that river, and the longer the shot, the more chance it's going to buffet the round. Off that slight fraction of an inch that will make all the difference between a dead Phoebe and one who merely has fruit of the looms full of shit. How about the roof of those apartments down on 39th? If that's an inch more than 250 yards, I'll eat my hat, and the angle would only be about 7 to 10 degrees. Here's the problem with that, said Hatfield, drumming his fingers on the table. That's going to be a crime scene. It will most likely be daylight, and we have to assume it will be all roped off, and there will be all kinds of state and local cops in attendance, as well as the FBI. If we get that close, E&E may be a problem. It will take us at least half a minute to get you down from the roof once you've made your shots, maybe more. Then we'd have to get into the vehicle and beat feet. They'll certainly try to move on the firing position if they can tell where the shots are coming from. Have one of us cover your withdrawal with a good spray of bullets from the Uzi or an AK, suggested Lee, clearly longing to do some spraying. And then who will cover your withdrawal? Demanded Hatfield. We may get chased if they make the Yukon or any of us fleeing the scene. I know the roads around here pretty good and I could lose any ground pursuit. But if they have any helicopters on standby to give them an eye in the sky, a daylight car chase is a chance I'd rather not take. Look, what I said about killing white cops, I know it's going to be necessary sometimes, but again, I'd rather not be forced into that position just yet. I want D Company's first blood to be the blood of our racial enemies, not former friends and neighbors, and I damn sure don't want any white cops killing us. Tell you what, sir, said Lockhart, we've still got a week. Let's you and me take a stroll around that whole area and see what we can see. You know the idea I had about using the roof of the Yukon itself as a firing position? We might find some way to make that work. On Valentine's night, Zack Hatfield and Tony Campisi sat in the front of a battered old GMC Yukon, parked behind a loading dock just off 39th Street. The night was dark and cloudy, and there was a light drizzling rain, a perfect cover for the volunteers. The cell phone on the dashboard rang. Zack answered it. Hello? Is this Luigi's Pizza? Asked Charlie Washburn on the other end. No, I'm sorry, you have the wrong number, said Zack in an exasperated voice, in case anyone was listening in. He folded the phone. Okay, they've left the house. Charlie and Lee will be behind them. He'll let us know if there's any delay or change in their destination he detects, but we need to get into position. Hatfield started the Yukon and turned on the lights, and a moment later he rolled onto the long, curved 39th Street Pier. He pulled up into the parking lot on the former cannery platform and found the one available remaining space, which he carefully backed into. The restaurant was crowded, no doubt with Valentine couples. They could hear the noise and clinking of dishes and voices even through the rain. Where the hell are the Goldmans going to park? Asked Tony, looking around. They're chock-a-block in there, looks like. We will kindly give up our space, of course, said Hatfield with a chuckle. Okay, we've got a few minutes. Check your weapon once, and then leave it alone until it's time to use it. Tony took out a snub and broke the cylinder, and saw the 5 special black Talon rounds. He closed the cylinder. Zack did the same with his old police-issue Smith & Wesson. 357 Magnum. They were both using revolvers so as not to have to go scrambling around looking for ejected cartridge casings. In addition to the E-pieces, Zack was carrying his Browning high power in a shoulder holster beneath his denim jacket, and Tony was packing a 9mm Beretta. In the backup car, Charlie and Lee were carrying a Kalashnikov and a 12-gauge pump as well as their handguns. "How you holding up, Tony?" asked Hatfield, noticing a slight shake in Campisi's hands. Campisi understood what he was talking about. "It's not fear, Zack. It's rage. I'm worried I'm going to fuck up, not because I get scared or nervous, but out of sheer blind murdering rage. I'm scared after I shoot them I'll just jump on them and beat their faces to a bloody pulp with a gun butt. Did I ever tell you how my people came out here? Some big Jew developers bought up block after block of Bensonhurst, turned the family homes into rental properties, rented to Mexicans and Puerto Ricans, to drive the Italians out, and then evicted the Spics to build a big gated community for rich Jews and faggots and liberal yuppie assholes. $1 million for a lot that used to hold 4 working-class houses. Jobs were bad for blue-collar white men even then, and the only thing Dad could find was up in Tacoma, and that's where we lived until it got unlivable there too. When the oil wars started up, Fort Lewis flooded the city with military niggers and spics and whores and drug addicts and honky-tonks and sleaze. But we never forgot that it was Jews who drove us out of our homes to begin with. Then I read those illegal books you and Charlie gave me, and I understood why I hated them, why they should be hated. I never thought I would look forward to killing anyone like this, that I would so long to see their blood and hear them scream in fear. I guess I still have the vendetta in my blood, from my ancestors. I want it bad, Zack. I know what they've done just to me and my family. When you multiply that by the entire world in 3,000 years, the mind simply can't comprehend it. "You'll do fine," said Zack with a smile. "Just remember, let me fire first. I'll take the Yenta, you take Jake. Call it psychology. I've killed women before, here and in Iraq, and so has Cat Eyes, and it doesn't bother us, but for their own self-image and emotional strength. I think every volunteer's first kill needs to be a man, and a clear racial enemy, a Jew or a nigger or a Fed of some kind. God knows all the horrible ambiguities of war will set in for us all, in time." The phone rang again. Zack opened it. A silly, childlike voice said, "Is your refrigerator running?" "Dickhead," said Zack, and closed the phone. "They've just turned onto 39th Street. Zack started the Yukon's engine but kept the lights off. "Gun in your left hand, keep your right to open the door." Campisi took out and complied. They could see the lights of the Lincoln rolling slowly across the pier toward them. "I'll wait until he comes down this side looking for a parking spot." The Lincoln rolled onto the platform at about 5 miles an hour, went down the row behind them, and turned left, then left again. Zack turned on his lights and eased the Yukon out of the space, turning left toward the bridge. "Oi, honey, look, that nice man is leaving us his parking space," mocked Campisi in a girlish voice. The Lincoln slid into the vacated space, and the lights turned off. Zack hit his windshield wipers. The rain was light but steady. He stopped the Yukon at the edge of the bridge. "No one is coming. Couldn't be more perfect. All right, let's do it. Masks." The 2 volunteers pulled navy blue wool ski masks down over their faces and got out of the SUV. At an even pace, they walked toward the dimly seen couple going toward the restaurant entrance, who were a bit more ahead of them than Zack had anticipated. They might have had to run to catch up, but the man stopped to close his umbrella in the well-lit doorway. They were perfect targets. "God, please don't let anyone open that door right now," whispered Zack in silent prayer. When they were 5 feet behind the 2 expensively dressed people, some sound or sense made the Goldmans both turn. They stared at 2 men coming out of the darkness just beyond the pool of friendly light and laughter, masked so that only the black of their eyes could be seen, and leveling revolvers at them. The 2 gunmen said nothing, but Jacob Goldman gasped out in a strangled cry, "You!" All 4 of them understood what Jacob Goldman had said. He did not know or recognize the men who were about to put him to death. They had always been far beneath him, part of the scenery he saw from the window of his luxury car or a plush office suite, animals, who through some accident of nature resembled God's chosen people in outward form, but whom the sages of Torah assured him were beasts without souls. Yet he knew who they were, and why they were here. 4,000 years of racial instinct crackled in a moment of cosmic, hideous recognition and knowledge. A timeless drama was once again about to be played out. An ancient debt was once more to be paid, and blood was about to be spilled once more in humanity's longest war. The men before Jacob Goldman could have been wearing Roman armor, or Crusaders' chainmail, or Cossack leather and furs, or the black tunic of the SS. Now they wore denim jeans and ski masks, but oh yes, he knew them. Now he was going to die, because they knew him as well, knew him for what he was. At the head of the plank bridge on the shore, Charlie and Lee Washburn had the windows rolled down in their Toyota. They heard the shots and saw the muzzle flashes in the rain. A minute later the Yukon rolled by them, and Zack waved a friendly thumbs up out the window. Charlie pulled around and followed him up 39th Street and out onto the main road, Zack turning left, and he himself right. They would go to the debriefing rendezvous by separate routes.